Excellent.
Okay, everyone, I recently watched a video by Retro Ralph. He went over some arcade joystick options. Mainly, he talked a lot about Sanwa and went over a little bit about Happ. I wanted to expand on what he said about Happ. He did say that he loved the competition joysticks, and I'm in the same boat as him. I really think the competition are great, but I also like the Super. So let me talk a little bit further about Happ and what options they have. They mainly have three options: the Ultimate, the Competition, and the Super. And according to how you prefer these joysticks, or how most people prefer the quality, it goes from Ultimate to Competition and then Super. Now, I recently got a couple competitions. I was mainly a Super user. I'm going to get into the differences in a second, but the competition is actually growing on me. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do when you want to order a Happ joystick is go to the authorized Suzo Happ website and order them from there. Not only can you get them cheaper, but you're not going to get any knockoffs or incorrect joysticks. You go to eBay or you go to even Amazon, it'll say competition, but in actuality, you're going to get an Ultimate or some knockoff. So just go right to the website. Now, you're going to have to do a minimum order of $50, but you're going to get them for cheaper, and you're going to get more for your money, and you're going to make sure you get the right product. When you do get the joystick, you're going to want to save your instructions. It's going to come with instructions. It has parts on here. In case anything goes wrong in the long run, you can call them back up and order the parts with the part numbers that are on here. Okay, let's talk about some of the differences first. Right here, I have an Ultimate. Right here, I have a Super. And then in here, I have two competitions. Okay. As Retro Ralph mentioned, the main difference is the micro switches on here. If you look at the Ultimate, it has white micro switches that are E switches. Okay, they're not bad, they're not horrible, but they're not as good as the cherry switches. The other difference, the main difference between the Super and the Ultimate and the competition is the actuator. Now, if you listen to what Ralph had to say about the Sanwas, he mentioned about an octagon gate and a square gate. Happ doesn't use the gates. They use actuators. They have square actuators and round actuators. You're going to find a round actuator in the Super joysticks, okay? When you get the assembly, it's going to come with a round actuator. That round actuator is used in place of the normal square actuator that you saw on the competition joysticks. That actuator goes in the same way, but you'll notice that this housing has what's called switch arms. So when the round one goes around, you hit these arms that push the switch. The reason most people don't like the Supers or the round actuators, which X Arcade uses the same type of housing. I really like X Arcade as well. But the main reason they don't like them is because they can't get the feel of, say, the downward crouch block, because you don't have that groove in a square plate or a square gate or a octagonal gate. So if you're not used to it, you might think you're in a crouch position and you're not, and then you get hit. But if you're used to the circle type actuator and you start playing with it more and you get used to it, you might really like it. I'm used to it. I like it a lot. Here's an example of an X Arcade joystick with a circle actuator. If you take a close look at that, you can kind of see in there the actuator is a circle, and it hits those bars as you move it. And again, this is a X Arcade joystick. They use different micro switches. I really like their micro switches as well. They're excellent, very comparable to the cherry switches. One of the other things that he talked about was an 8-way joystick versus a 4-way joystick. Now, if you're going to go with the Happ option, the competition do not allow for a 4-way option. You would have to go with an Ultimate, and then you have to change the actuator in it. I'm going to show you that in a second on my Miss Pac-Man Galaga, where I have a 4-way actuator in there. The other thing you're going to want to make note of when you're assembling your joystick is when you put it drop down through the top, you have a long cylinder and you have a short cylinder. This cylinder controls the height of the joystick relative to the top of your control panel. So if you're using a metal control panel that's very thin, you want to use the short cylinder so the joystick won't be too high. If you're using 3/4 inch wood, you use the long cylinder to make sure the joystick is a little bit higher. Now, you'll notice on the joystick you have grooves here where the E-ring goes in, or the pin, whatever you want to call it. The pin or the E-ring goes into different grooves based off of whether you use the tall cylinder or the short cylinder. Okay, a couple things before I get into the springs on the Happs, as well as the four-way joystick option that I have in this arcade here. I'll put the link of the video that Retro Ralph did so you can get a little bit more information about Sanwa and Happ. And also, if you're an arcade enthusiast, you want to go to Rockin'the CLassics Discord, join the Discord page. I'll link the page in the description. Go there, go to the room called the Show-Arcade Corner. We talk about arcade games. We talk about building cabs. We talk about modding cabs. So just go to that room, say hello, ask any question you want, and we'll be happy to discuss. Now, a lot of the feel on arcade joysticks has to do with the spring and the spring tension inside the joystick. All three models of the Happ style joysticks are supposed to come with the standard spring. They technically only offer a standard and a heavy duty spring. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't change it if you don't want to something else. I've never personally used a custom spring, but really all you simply have to do is remove the micro switches, remove the screws from the housing, break it open, and put a new spring in there. If you look at your instructions when you get the joystick, it'll give you the heavy spring item number. I believe you'd have to order it separately. For me, the standard spring is fine. It's more looser, and I like that feel. I don't want to have to push very hard left or right, and I like a soft feel, and the competition has that soft feel. One thing about Suzo Happ is they have changed their production facilities and their manufacturing facilities locations. So I'm not so sure about the consistency of their builds and the design. It seems like you may find an older style joystick or housing out there for different types of joysticks. So be wary of that. Now, I talked about converting your Happ to a four-way joystick for games like Pac-Man and Galaga, just old school classics that you don't need the 8-way directional input. In order to do that, you're going to need a different actuator. Now, this is the actuator that you're going to need right here. It's a circle style actuator that you switch out from your joystick. When I ordered my Ultimate, and remember, only the Ultimate and the Super can be used as a four-way, not the competition, because the competition uses a smaller actuator and a different housing, so it's a little bit different. And when I ordered my Ultimate, I didn't get both actuators. So you're going to have to order the actuator separately, most likely. The item number will be on your instructions. You can find it there, and then you can order it separately. Now, if we take a look at the Miss Pac-Man Galaga arcade here that I built, I'm going to do a separate video on how I built this and how I got the 20-year Pac-Man MAME zip ROM to work with this machine. But what I want to show you here is right here, you'll see I have the circle actuator, the four-way actuator. And if you're going to take this E-ring out, get a real tiny screwdriver, pry it in there, and then pry it out. It looked like Ralph was using a razor blade. You don't want to do that. You're going to break your razor blade. Some of these E-rings are really hard to get out. You just got to keep working at it and try and get the smallest little tiny screwdriver and pry it in there and pry it out. But what you'll notice here is when you go diagonal, you don't hit any switches. So you only got left, right, up, and down. And that's how you change your joystick to a four-way if you want to. But if you want the classic feel, it actually feels a little different too when you switch to four-way, because the what's called a deflection, which is the length of the time it takes for you to move the joystick to hit the micro switch, it's a little bit longer. So the deflection on the Happs is actually a little bit longer than Sanwa's as well. So the amount of time it takes to get to that micro switch is a little bit different than the Sanwa joysticks. But again, this is all personal preference on what you're going to like. You're going to have to try a few different ones before you get the feel of what you like. And hey, I hope you liked the video. I hope I explained a lot here. If you have any questions, always put them in the comments. I will answer you as soon as I can. And subscribe. If you want to see the build on this machine right here, I'm going to do a video shortly on that. And again, go join Rockin'the CLassics Discord. And thanks again for watching The Rexer Show.